The scar tissue on my right wrist ached when the weather changed, a permanent reminder of the night I'd tried to climb out Daniel's second-story window and fell instead. 3 years later, I could still feel the crack of impact, the way my bones had splintered like dry wood. The doctors had done their best, but my hand would never be quite right again. Some breaks don't heal cleanly. I flexed my fingers around the tray of dirty glasses, ignoring the familiar twinge as I navigated through the Friday night crowd at Valentino's. The restaurant sat in the heart of Chicago's River North, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the kind of place where tech executives brought clients and wealthy tourists came to feel like locals. The air was thick with the smell of wood-fired pizza and the Barolo that cost more per bottle than I made in a week. My feet had gone numb 2 hours ago, compressed into the black flats that were falling apart, but still had another month of life in them if I was careful. The apron tied around my waist covered the worst of the wine stains on my uniform, and my hair was pulled back so tightly it gave me a headache. But headaches were better than having some drunk grab a handful of loose curls, which had happened exactly twice before I learned. "Sophie, table 9 needs water, and the kitchen's backed up on the risotto for table 12. Marcus, the floor manager, materialized beside me with his tablet and his perpetual expression of barely contained panic. His cologne was aggressive, the kind that announced his presence 3 tables away. I nodded, already moving. Table 9 was a group of lawyers celebrating something, their voices carrying across the dining room in that particular way of people who'd never been told to be quiet. Table 12 was different. I'd noticed them the moment they'd arrived 30 minutes ago. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. 4 men in suits that probably cost more than my car, positioned with their backs to the walls, eyes constantly scanning. The kind of awareness that came from training or paranoia or both. They'd ordered in Italian, the real kind, not the menu Italian that most customers attempted. And they'd requested the corner booth, the one that gave clear sightlines to both entrances and the kitchen. The man at the center of the table radiated authority in a way that had nothing to do with volume. He was maybe 40, with dark hair silvered at the temples and a face that would have been beautiful if it weren't so severe. Sharp cheekbones, a nose that had been broken at least once, eyes the color of espresso that seemed to catalog everything they touched. He wore his power like other men wore cologne, subtle but unmistakable. I'd served enough tables to recognize danger when I saw it. This man was dangerous. I refilled their water glasses with practiced efficiency, my gaze lowered in the deferential posture that kept me invisible. But I was watching. Always watching. It was a skill I'd developed during 18 months with Daniel, the ability to track threats in my peripheral vision, to sense shifts in mood before they became violent. The dangerous man was speaking quietly to his associates when I noticed the new server. He'd appeared during my break, filling in for Tony, who'd called in sick. Tall, with the kind of build that came from serious gym time, sandy haircut, military short. His movements were wrong, too stiff, too calculated. He fumbled with the wine opener at the service station, his thick fingers clumsy with the delicate mechanism. But his eyes weren't clumsy. They were focused, tracking the corner booth with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. I moved closer, pretending to organize the bread baskets at the service station. Up close, I could see the sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the restaurant's careful climate control. His left hand kept drifting toward his waist, then jerking away, like he was fighting muscle memory. When he reached for a tray of appetizers, his jacket rode up. The gun was small, compact, tucked into a holster at the small of his back. Easy to miss if you weren't looking. But I'd grown up on the South Side, had dated a cop briefly after escaping Daniel, had learned to recognize the weight and shape of concealed weapons. My heart hammered against my ribs. The fake server was moving now, abandoning his pretense of work, drifting toward the corner booth with a tray balanced on his palm. His other hand was already reaching for his waist. Time compressed. I thought about calling Marcus, but he was across the dining room handling a complaint. I thought about screaming, but that might trigger the shooter faster. I thought about running, about letting whatever was about to happen unfold without me, about keeping my head down and my mouth shut the way I'd learned to survive. But then I looked at the dangerous man in the corner booth. Saw him laugh at something one of his associates said, saw the way his hand gestured with surprising grace, saw the gold wedding band on his finger. Someone loved him. Someone was waiting for him to come home. I grabbed a basket of bread and moved. The fake server was 10 feet from the booth when I intercepted him, stepping directly into his path with my brightest customer service smile. "Excuse me, are you looking for table 14? I think that's who ordered these appetizers." He tried to sidestep me. I moved with him, maintaining my position between him and his target. Up close, I could see the tick in his jaw, the way his pupils were blown wide with adrenaline. "Move," he hissed under his breath, his accent slipping. "Eastern European. Russian, maybe." "I really think these go to 14, I said louder, letting my voice carry. "Marcus is very particular about orders going to the right tables." His hand was moving, toward his waist. I had maybe 3 seconds. I stumbled, deliberately, letting the breadbasket fall. As it clattered to the floor, I caught myself on his arm and leaned in close, my lips nearly touching his ear. "He's armed," I whispered to the man in the corner booth, projecting my voice just loud enough. "Back of his waist! He's here for you!" What happened in the next 8 seconds seemed to unfold in slow motion and light speed simultaneously. The dangerous man's eyes snapped to mine, one heartbeat of assessment where I saw him process everything: my uniform, my proximity to the threat, the warning I'd just given. Then his gaze shifted to the fake server, cataloging the details I'd noticed, confirming the threat. He moved. His hand came up in a gesture so subtle I almost missed it. His 3 associates reacted instantly, rising from their seats with synchronized precision. The man to his right moved to intercept the fake server. The other 2 positioned themselves as shields, their bodies blocking any potential line of fire. The dangerous man himself was already moving backward, his chair scraping as he created distance, his own hand disappearing inside his jacket. The fake server realized his cover was blown. His hand jerked toward his waist, fingers closing around the grip of his weapon. He never got it clear of his holster. The associate who'd moved to intercept caught his wrist in mid-draw, twisting with brutal efficiency. I heard bone crack. The gun clattered to the floor. The entire booth had transformed from casual dinner to tactical response in less than 3 seconds. By second 5, 2 more men had appeared from somewhere, probably the bar, probably the entrance, probably stationed there all along as additional security. They moved through the crowd like ghosts, guests barely registering their presence. By second 6, the fake server was on the ground, his arm twisted behind his back at an angle that made my stomach turn, a knee pressed between his shoulder blades. By second 7, one of the men had smoothly produced a folded napkin and was kneeling to retrieve the fallen weapon, wrapping it carefully, moving with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this before. By second 8, the dangerous man was standing behind his human shields, his eyes locked on mine with an intensity that stole my breath, and the restaurant was frozen in a moment of perfect, terrible silence. Then someone dropped a plate in the kitchen, and the spell broke. Conversation resumed with nervous energy. Guests who'd been watching quickly looked away, demonstrating that particular Chicago talent for minding your own business. Marcus appeared at my elbow, his face sheet-white. "Sophie, what?" "That man wasn't Tony's replacement," I said quietly, my whole body starting to shake with delayed shock. "He had a gun. He was going to shoot someone." The dangerous man spoke a single word in Italian, low, commanding, and his men began moving with purpose. 2 of them hauled the fake server to his feet and marched him toward the back exit, moving fast enough to preclude resistance, but not so fast as to draw more attention. Another pulled out a phone, speaking rapidly in the same Italian dialect. Then the dangerous man was walking toward me. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet wouldn't move, rooted to the floor by exhaustion and shock and the weight of what had just happened. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough to speak privately, far enough to be respectful, and studied my face with those dark, intense eyes. "You saved my life," he said. His voice was deep, accented with Italian vowels that softened the English consonants. "Why?" The question caught me off guard. I saw the gun. I couldn't just let him. You don't know me. You don't know what I am, what I do." He tilted his head slightly, curiosity mixing with something else I couldn't identify. "Most people would have run. You put yourself between me and a man with a weapon. That takes either courage or foolishness. Maybe both," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "What is your name?" "Sophie. Sophie Chen. Sophie Chen." He repeated it like he was committing it to memory, tasting each syllable. "I am Dante Valenti." The name meant nothing to me, but I saw Marcus's face go even paler in my peripheral vision. Apparently, it should have meant something. "Mr. Valenti, I think perhaps you and your party should leave," Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly. "I'll comp your meals, of course, and if there's anything else we will leave," Dante agreed, but his eyes never left mine. "But first, I need to speak with Sophie." Privately. It wasn't a request. Marcos looked at me, then at Dante, then made the calculation that managers everywhere make when confronted with power they can't challenge. Use my office. 5 minutes. Dante gestured toward the back hallway with the same fluid grace I'd noticed earlier. After you. Every survival instinct I'd honed over 3 years was screaming danger, but I'd just saved this man's life. Surely that bought me some safety. Surely he wouldn't hurt someone who'd helped him. I walked toward the back hallway, feeling his presence behind me like a physical weight. Marcus's office was barely larger than a closet, dominated by a desk covered in invoices and a filing cabinet that had seen better days. Dante closed the door behind us, and suddenly the small space felt even smaller, the air thick with tension and the lingering scent of his cologne, something expensive that smelled of leather and cedar. You're trembling, he observed. A man almost shot you. I'm processing. You're afraid of me. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Should I be? He was quiet for a moment, studying me with an intensity that made me feel transparent. No. You saved my life, Sophie Chen. That means something in my world. It means I owe you a debt. I don't want anything. That's not how this works. He pulled a business card from his jacket pocket, the same motion I'd seen him make when he'd reached for his gun. The card was heavy stock, cream-colored, with nothing but a phone number embossed in gold. Someone will come looking for answers about tonight. The people who sent that man won't be happy that he failed. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means they might decide you're a loose end that needs tying up. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. It means you're not as safe as you were an hour ago, and that's my fault. So I'm offering you my protection. I don't need protection. Everyone needs protection. He set the card on Marcus's desk, positioning it carefully so it faced me. The question is whether they're smart enough to accept it when it's offered. I've been taking care of myself for a long time. I can see that. His gaze dropped to my right wrist, to the scar tissue that peeked out from beneath my sleeve. I instinctively pulled my hand back, hiding it behind my back. His eyes returned to mine, and I saw something new there. Understanding. But taking care of yourself and being safe are not the same thing. Especially not now. Who are you, really? I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know the answer. I'm someone who protects what's mine. My family, my business, my people. He paused, weighing his next words. And as of tonight, that includes you, whether you accept it or not. That's not how consent works. Another ghost of a smile. You're right. I apologize. Let me rephrase. I would like to ensure your safety after tonight's events. If you encounter any problems, any threats, anything that makes you uncomfortable, call that number. Someone will answer. Always. I stared at the card, warring between pride and pragmatism. I'd spent 3 years rebuilding my life after Daniel, learning to stand on my own, refusing to depend on anyone who might turn dependency into control, but I'd also learned to recognize genuine danger, and Dante Valenti's warning had the ring of truth. What if I don't call? What if I just go on with my life? Then you go on with your life, and I hope nothing happens to disrupt it. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the knob. But if something does happen, if you need help and you didn't call, I'll never forgive myself. And I'll never forgive you for being too stubborn to accept a gift freely given. Why do you care? He turned back, and for the first time, I saw something vulnerable in his expression. Because 30 years ago, a woman very much like you warned my father about a similar threat. She died 3 days later, shot in her apartment by the people who'd sent that first assassin. She'd refused my father's protection, said she didn't want to be involved. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with grief and regret. My father never forgave himself, Dante continued, quietly. He carried that guilt until the day he died. I won't make his mistake. I won't let another brave woman pay for my enemy's vengeance because she was too proud to accept help. He opened the door and was gone before I could respond, his footsteps fading down the hallway. I stood alone in Marcus's tiny office, staring at the business card like it might bite me. Through the wall, I could hear the restaurant returning to normal. Dishes clattering, conversation flowing, the kitchen calling out orders, life continuing as if the last 10 minutes hadn't happened, as if the world hadn't shifted on its axis. I picked up the card. The number was embossed so deeply I could feel it under my fingertips, raised like braille. No name, no title, just 11 digits that connected to What? A world I'd only seen in movies. A life I'd sworn never to touch after barely escaping Daniel's version of control. But Dante Valenti wasn't Daniel. I'd seen the difference in those 8 seconds. The way his men moved to protect rather than threaten. The way he'd assessed the danger rather than creating it. The way he'd thanked me instead of dismissing me. I slipped the card into my apron pocket and walked back onto the floor. Marcus intercepted me immediately, pulling me aside near the kitchen doors. "Sophie, what did he say to you?" "He gave me his number. Said to call if I had any problems." Marcus's eyes went wide. "Do you know who that was?" "Dante Valenti runs half the construction contracts in Chicago. His family's been in the city since Prohibition. He's—" Marcus stopped, choosing his words carefully. "He's someone you want on your side and never want against you." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, if Dante Valenti gives you his personal number, you keep it somewhere safe and you thank whatever god you pray to that you earned his gratitude instead of his anger." Marcus glanced around, lowering his voice. "That man you stopped? He'll disappear. The police will never find him. There won't be any investigation because there won't be any evidence. That's how Valenti's world works." A chill ran down my spine. Should I be worried? About Valenti? No. He protects people who help him. It's people who cross him who should be worried. Marcus squeezed my shoulder, a rare gesture of comfort. "Take the rest of the night off. Go home. Process. And Sophie, if anyone asks about tonight, you didn't see anything. You don't know anything. Understood?" I nodded, too numb to argue. The November night had turned bitter, a sharp wind cutting down the street as I pushed through Valentino's back door into the alley. I pulled my thin jacket tighter, knowing it wouldn't help. I couldn't afford a proper winter coat, not until next month's paycheck, not with the medical bills still piling up from the wrist surgery I'd needed after leaving Daniel. The L train would be crowded this time of night, packed with people heading home from work or out for the evening. I'd have to stand for 40 minutes, holding on to the pole with my bad hand, feeling the ache intensify with each sway and jolt. But at least I'd be going home to my own apartment, small as it was. At least I'd be safe behind my own locked door, alone by choice rather than trapped by someone else's control. I was halfway down the alley when I heard footsteps behind me. My body reacted before my mind caught up, muscles tensing, pulse spiking, that familiar flood of adrenaline that came from months of hypervigilance. I turned, hand already reaching for the pepper spray I kept clipped to my keys. A man stood at the mouth of the alley. Not the fake server. This one was shorter, stockier, wearing a dark jacket and jeans that had seen better days. His face was shadowed, but I could see his eyes tracking me with predatory focus. "Sophie Chen?" His accent was thick, unmistakably Russian. "We need to talk." I backed up, my shoulder blades hitting the brick wall. "I don't know you, but you know the man you saved tonight." He took a step closer. "That was very stupid, very brave. Now my employers want to know what else you know, what you saw, what you heard." "I don't know anything. I'm just a waitress." "Just a waitress who noticed things she shouldn't have noticed, who warned Valenti before our man could complete his job." Another step closer. "That makes you either very observant or very connected. Either way, you're a problem." My fingers closed around the pepper spray. "Stay back." He laughed, a sound without humor. "That little spray won't help you. Just come quietly. Answer some questions. Maybe you go home after. Maybe not. Either way, fighting makes it worse." I thought about screaming, but the alley was deserted. The street beyond it busy enough that no one would investigate one more city sound. I thought about running, but he was between me and the exit, and my feet were already aching from 8 hours on them. I thought about the card in my apron pocket. "I'm going to reach into my pocket," I said carefully. "I'm not going for a weapon." He tensed, but nodded. "Slowly." I pulled out my phone with my left hand, the card with my right. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely read the numbers. I started dialing, putting the phone on speaker so he could hear. "That won't," he started. The call connected on the first ring. "This is Dante Valenti." His voice came through the speaker clear and commanding, no greeting, no preamble. "Who is this?" "Sophie Chen. There's a man in the alley behind Valentino's. He says his employer sent him. He says I'm a problem they need to solve." The silence on the other end lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then, "Put him on the phone." I held out the device. The Russian's face had gone pale. He took the phone with a hand that wasn't quite steady. "Yes?" I couldn't hear what Dante said, but I watched the Russian's expression shift from confident to uncertain to terrified in the span of 30 seconds. He said something in Russian, then switched to English. "I understand. Yes. It won't happen again." "Yes, sir." He ended the call and handed my phone back like it was burning his fingers. "This isn't over," he said, but the conviction was gone from his voice. "Tell Valenti—" I wouldn't finish that sentence. The new voice came from behind me. I spun to find one of Dante's men, the same one who'd intercepted the fake server, emerging from the shadows at the other end of the alley. He moved with casual confidence, hands loose at his sides, but radiating the same controlled danger I'd sensed in Dante. "Mr. Valenti has made his position very clear," the man continued in lightly accented English. "This woman is under his protection. Anyone who touches her answers to him personally. Do you understand what that means?" The Russian nodded jerkily. "Then I suggest you leave. Now. And tell your employers that their problem isn't with Sophie Chen. Their problem is with Dante Valenti. If they want to settle it, they know how to reach him." The Russian ran. Actually ran, stumbling in his haste to escape the alley. The sound of his footsteps faded into the night, leaving me alone with Dante's man and the growing realization of what had just happened. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice gentler now. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. "My name is Carlo. Mr. Valenti has asked me to ensure you get home safely." He gestured toward the street. "There's a car waiting. I'll drive you." "I can take the train. With respect, Miss Chen, you will not take the train tonight, or any night for the foreseeable future." Carlo's expression was apologetic but firm. "Mr. Valenti was very clear about your safety. Please, let me do my job." I was too tired, too scared, too overwhelmed to argue. I followed him to a black SUV idling on the street, its engine purring with expensive efficiency. The interior was warm, leather seats that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Carlo drove in silence, somehow knowing where I lived without me giving directions. When we pulled up in front of my building, a 3-story walk-up in Pilsen that had definitely seen better days, he put the car in park but didn't turn off the engine. "Mr. Valenti will want to speak with you tomorrow," he said. "Someone will come by to arrange a time. Is that acceptable?" What choice did I have? "Yes." "Good." He handed me a different card, this one with his name and number. "If anything concerns you tonight, any sound, any visitor, anything at all, you call that number immediately. I'm 5 minutes away." I climbed out of the SUV on shaking legs and watched him wait until I'd unlocked the building's front door before driving away. The stairwell smelled of old cooking and cleaning products that didn't quite mask the underlying must. I climbed to the 3rd floor, fumbled my keys into the lock, and finally made it inside my apartment. It was small, a studio that was really just one room with a bathroom, attached. But it was mine. Clean, organized, safe. I'd painted the walls myself, a warm cream that made the space feel bigger. My grandmother's quilt covered the bed in the corner. Books I'd collected from thrift stores lined a shelf made from cinder blocks and reclaimed wood. This was my sanctuary, built piece by piece after escaping Daniel. Proof that I could survive alone, that I didn't need anyone's protection or permission or presence to exist. And now that sanctuary had been compromised. Now there were Russian men who knew where I worked, who'd followed me into alleys, who saw me as a problem to be eliminated. Now there was Dante Valenti, with his dark eyes and dangerous world, offering protection I hadn't asked for but apparently desperately needed. I sank onto my bed, still wearing my jacket and shoes, and pulled out both cards. Carlo's, with its printed information and professional font. Dante's, with just that single number embossed in gold. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, already knowing who it would be. "You're home safe?" Dante's voice was softer than it had been in Marcus's office, almost gentle. "Yes." "Good. Carlo will be outside your building tonight. Tomorrow we talk about what happens next. I don't want to be part of your world." "You already are." No judgment in his tone, just stating facts. "The moment you warned me, you became part of it. I'm sorry for that, truly. But we deal with reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. What if I refuse? What if I just move? Change jobs? Disappear? Then the people who sent that man tonight will find you eventually. They're persistent, patient, and they won't ask questions nicely the way that man in the alley did." A pause. "I've seen what they do to people they consider loose ends, Sophie. I don't want you to become one of those stories." My throat tightened. "So I have no choice." "You always have a choice. But some choices have consequences we have to live with." His voice softened further. "Get some rest. We'll figure this out tomorrow. I promise you're safe tonight." He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my tiny apartment holding 2 business cards that represented everything I'd run from 3 years ago, men who thought protection and possession were the same thing, who believed their power gave them the right to make decisions for others, who created dangers they then insisted on saving you from. But Dante Valenti hadn't created this danger. I had by being observant, by being brave, by refusing to look away when violence was about to unfold. And now I had to live with the consequences. I changed into my pajamas, brushed my teeth, went through all the normal motions of getting ready for bed. But when I finally lay down, I kept my phone on the nightstand with both numbers programmed in, and I left my shoes by the door in case I needed to run. Outside, I knew Carlos sat in his SUV, watching my building, standing guard against threats I couldn't see but knew were there. Inside, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how my life had changed so completely in the span of 8 seconds. 8 seconds between a whispered warning and this moment. 8 seconds that had saved a life and possibly destroyed mine. 8 seconds that had connected me to a man whose world was built on violence and loyalty and debts that demanded repayment. I closed my eyes, exhausted but too wired to sleep, and felt the card's embossed number pressing against my palm like a brand. Tomorrow, I would talk to Dante Valenti and learn what protection really meant. Tomorrow, I would discover if I'd saved a life or just delayed my own destruction. Tomorrow, everything would change again. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, I fell asleep knowing someone was watching over me who hadn't been ordered to do it by a man who owned me. That had to count for something. I woke to the smell of coffee. Not the burnt bitter coffee from my ancient Mr. Coffee machine, but real coffee. The kind that cost $8 a cup at the places I walked past on my way to work. The scent was rich and dark, cutting through the fog of exhausted sleep that had finally claimed me around 4 a.m. My eyes snapped open. Someone was in my apartment. I sat up, heart hammering, reaching for my phone. The numbers on the screen read 8:47 a.m. I'd overslept. I was supposed to open at Valentino's at 11, which meant I needed to leave in 45 minutes to account for the train and... "Good morning, Miss Chen." The voice came from my tiny kitchen area. I turned to find a woman I'd never seen before calmly pouring coffee into 2 mugs. She was maybe 50, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing tailored slacks and a cream blouse that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her movements had the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" "My name is Maria Rossetti. Mr. Valenti sent me." She carried both mugs to the small table by my window, setting them down with practiced grace. "And I knocked 3 times before using the key your landlord provided. You were sleeping very deeply. Understandably so, given last night's events." I pulled my blanket tighter around myself, suddenly aware I was wearing an old t-shirt and shorts that had holes in them. "My landlord gave you a key to my apartment?" "Mr. Valenti owns this building." Maria said it like she was commenting on the weather. "He bought it this morning. The previous owner was very motivated to sell." The words took a moment to process. What? "Please, have some coffee. We have much to discuss, and you'll think more clearly with caffeine." Maria settled into one of my mismatched chairs with the poise of someone sitting in a palace. "Mr. Valenti would like to meet with you at noon. I'm here to help you prepare." "I have to work." "No, you don't. Mr. Valenti has arranged for you to take a leave of absence. From Valentino's. You'll continue to receive your full pay, plus 20% for the inconvenience." Maria pulled out a tablet, scrolling through information with manicured fingers. "Your rent has been paid through the end of the year. Your medical bills from Chicago Memorial have been settled in full. And this," she produced an envelope from her bag, "is 3 months' salary as a gesture of gratitude for your actions last night." I stared at the envelope like it might explode. "I don't want his money. It's not about what you want, dear. It's about what you need." Maria's voice was kind but firm. "Mr. Valenti takes care of people who help him. That's how his world works. Refusing would actually be quite insulting." "I don't care if it's insulting. I take care of myself." Maria set down her tablet and looked at me with eyes that held surprising warmth. "I've worked for the Valenti family for 32 years, Sophie. May I call you Sophie?" I nodded numbly. "I've seen many people in situations like yours. Good people who helped when they didn't have to, who showed courage when it would have been safer to look away." She leaned forward slightly. "The ones who accept help with grace, they go on to live good lives. The ones who let pride dictate their choices, they often regret it. Not because Mr. Valenti punishes them, but because the people who wanted him dead don't forget the witnesses who got in their way." The coffee sat cooling on the table between us, steam curling in the morning light filtering through my thin curtains. I wanted to argue, to insist that I could handle this myself, that I didn't need some mafia boss managing my life like I was a child, but I thought about the Russian in the alley, about the casual way he discussed maybe letting me go home and maybe not, about the fact that I'd slept through someone entering my apartment because I'd been so exhausted from fear. "What does he want from me?" I asked quietly. "Today? Just a conversation. To explain your options and ensure you understand the situation." Maria pushed the coffee toward me. "After that? Nothing you're not willing to give? Mr. Valenti doesn't operate the way you might think. He doesn't collect people like debts. He protects them because that's who he is." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, drawing comfort from its heat. The coffee was perfect. Strong but not bitter, with cream already added just the way I liked it. Which meant Dante Valenti had somehow learned my coffee preferences. Which meant he'd been paying attention to details about me I hadn't realized anyone noticed. "How does he know how I take my coffee?" Maria's smile held a hint of amusement. "Mr. Valenti knows everything about everyone in his orbit. It's how he stays alive. He's been aware of you for some time, actually." My head snapped up. "What?" "You've worked at Valentino's for 8 months. He's dined there at least once a week during that time. He noticed you." Maria's expression softened. Not in a threatening way. "He simply observed that you were different from the other servers. More watchful, more careful. Like someone who'd learned to see danger before it arrived." The idea that Dante Valenti had been watching me for 8 months made my skin crawl, and something else, something I didn't want to examine, flutter in my chest. "I need to shower," I said abruptly, "and get dressed. If I'm meeting him at noon, I should at least look presentable." "Of course." Maria stood gracefully. "I'll wait here. Oh, and Sophie, don't wear your work clothes. This isn't that kind of meeting." After she left the room, as much as one could leave a room in a studio apartment, I retreated to my bathroom and stood underwater as hot as I could stand. My right wrist ached under the spray, the scar tissue tight and angry. I traced it with my left hand, remembering. Daniel had never hit me. That was what made it so insidious. He'd never left bruises where anyone could see them. He'd been too smart for that. Instead, he'd pushed me downstairs when I tried to leave. He'd accidentally slammed my hand in a car door when I'd tried to call for help. He'd isolated me so completely that by the time I'd finally escaped, I'd had no one and nothing except a broken wrist and the clothes I'd been wearing. 3 years of rebuilding. 3 years of working double shifts and taking night classes and learning to exist alone because alone was safer than dependent. And now, Dante Valenti had swept into my life with his protection and his money and his inexplicable interest, and I had no idea if I was being saved or collected. I dressed in the only nice clothes I owned. Black slacks I'd bought at Goodwill and a blue sweater that didn't have any stains or holes. My hair refused to cooperate, so I left it down, hoping I looked more casual confidence than woman on the edge of a breakdown. Maria was waiting with a leather bag when I emerged. "Perfect. The car is downstairs. Carlo will drive us." "Us? I'll be joining you for the meeting. Mr. Valenti thought you might be more comfortable with another woman present." She said it casually, but I recognized the consideration behind the gesture. Also, I take excellent notes, and memories can be unreliable when we're stressed. The SUV was the same one from last night. Carlo greeted me with a professional nod and a Miss Chen that made me feel like someone important rather than a waitress who'd stumbled into something over her head. We drove north, out of Pilsen and through neighborhoods that got progressively wealthier. The buildings grew taller, the shops more exclusive, the people on the sidewalks better dressed. I watched Chicago transform through the tinted windows, feeling like I was traveling to a different country rather than just a different part of the city. "Where are we going?" I asked as Carlo navigated through the Gold Coast. "Mr. Valenti's home," Maria said. "He thought you'd prefer privacy for this conversation." The house, mansion really, sat behind iron gates on a tree-lined street where every property probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. It was beautiful in an understated way, all stone and tall windows, with gardens that somehow still looked manicured despite November's bite. Carlo pulled through the gates and around to a side entrance. "This way, Miss Chen. The main entrance is for formal occasions. Mr. Valenti wanted this to feel comfortable, not intimidating. If this was supposed to be comfortable, I couldn't imagine what intimidating looked like." Maria led me through a side door into a hallway lined with photographs. I caught glimpses of people in various eras, old Italy, early Chicago, more recent times, families, generations, history rendered in black and white and sepia, and eventually color. The Valenti family has been in Chicago since 1922, Maria said, noticing my interest. Mr. Valenti's great-grandfather came from Sicily with nothing but his wife and 3 suits. They built everything you see here through hard work, smart alliances, and understanding that loyalty matters more than money. We stopped outside a door of dark wood. Maria knocked once, then opened it. Mr. Valenti, Miss Chen is here. The room was an office, but nothing like the cramped, paper-filled space where Marcus worked. This was elegant. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk that looked like it belonged in a museum, leather furniture arranged around a fireplace where real wood crackled and popped. Dante Valenti stood by the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel. He'd changed from last night's suit into dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that did nothing to make him look less dangerous. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd recently showered, and without the formal attire, I could see the breadth of his shoulders, the way he held himself with absolute confidence. Sophie. He said my name like we were old friends. Thank you for coming. Please, sit. He gestured to one of the leather chairs. I sat, feeling the expensive material give slightly beneath me. Maria settled into another chair with her tablet ready. Carlo remained by the door, a silent sentinel. Dante took the chair across from me, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the scar that ran along his left eyebrow, the way his hands, scarred across the knuckles, rested calmly on the armrests. How are you feeling? He asked. Confused. Overwhelmed. Angry that someone bought my building without asking. His lips curved slightly. Fair. I apologize for the aggressive approach. But after last night's incident in the alley, I needed to ensure your immediate safety. Controlling your building was the fastest way to do that. You could have just asked. Would you have said yes? I wanted to say yes, but we both knew I would have refused. That's not the point. You're right. It's not. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, giving me his complete attention. Let me be very direct with you, Sophie, because I think you prefer directness. Last night, you prevented an assassination attempt on my life. The people who ordered that hit, a Russian organization trying to expand into Chicago, now consider you a liability. They will try to eliminate that liability. The man in the alley said, the man in the alley was a scout, testing your defenses, seeing if you were protected. Dante's expression hardened. The real attempt will come later, when they've gathered more information. They'll make it look like an accident or a random mugging. You'll simply disappear, and no one will ask questions because you're just a waitress with no family and few friends. The clinical way he described my potential murder made my stomach turn. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to make you understand reality. I don't benefit from your fear. I benefit from your informed cooperation. His voice softened. I'm offering you protection, Sophie. Real protection. Not control. Not ownership. Just safety while I resolve this situation. How do you resolve a situation like this? He was quiet for a moment, weighing his words. There are channels for these things. Negotiations, mediation through neutral parties. Sometimes money changes hands. Sometimes territory is redrawn. Sometimes... He paused. Examples must be made. But that's my concern, not yours. If you're killing people in my name, it becomes my concern. Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. I appreciate your moral clarity, but the men who would kill you without hesitation don't deserve your ethical consideration. They made their choice when they came after me. They confirmed it when they came after you. Maria cleared her throat gently. Perhaps we should discuss the practical arrangements. Miss Chen needs to understand what protection actually entails. Dante nodded, sitting back. You have 3 options. First, you continue your normal life. Work, apartment, routine, but with around-the-clock security. My men will be visible, which might deter threats, but will also announce to the world that you're under my protection. Some might see that as a challenge. Second option? You relocate temporarily. I have a property in Lake Forest. Very secure, very private. You'd have your own space, your own freedom to come and go, but within a protected perimeter. It's like a very nice, very boring vacation while I handle business. And the third option? His gaze held mine. You stay here. The air in the room seemed to thicken. Here, in this house. I have guest suites that are private, comfortable, and completely separate from my personal quarters. You'd have everything you need, food, entertainment, space to breathe, and you'd be under the same roof as me, which means the highest level of protection possible. He leaned forward again. I'm not asking you to be my guest as some kind of romantic overture, Sophie. I'm offering this because it's genuinely the safest option, but I understand if the idea makes you uncomfortable. Uncomfortable didn't begin to cover it. Living under the same roof as a man I barely knew, a man whose world operated by rules I didn't understand, a man who looked at me with an intensity that made my pulse race in ways I absolutely did not want to examine. But I thought about my tiny apartment with its cheap locks and thin walls, about the L train platform late at night, about serving tables while worrying that every new customer might be there to hurt me. If I stay here, I said slowly, what would that look like? Day to day? Maria consulted her tablet. You'd have a suite on the 3rd floor, bedroom, sitting room, private bathroom. Meals would be provided, but you're welcome to use the kitchen if you prefer to cook. The library, gym, and gardens are available for your use. Mr. Valenti works primarily from his office here, but he travels frequently for business. When he's away, full security staff remains. What about my job? Valentino's will hold your position, Dante said. When this is resolved, you can return if you wish, or... He paused. If you'd prefer to do something else, I have connections throughout Chicago. Restaurants, hotels, businesses that would be happy to have someone with your skills and work ethic. I don't want charity. It's not charity, it's opportunity. There's a difference. He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the gardens. My great-grandfather came to this country with nothing. People helped him because they saw potential, because they believed in investing in good people. He never forgot that. Neither have I. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. I watched him standing there, backlit by November sun filtering through expensive glass, and tried to reconcile the dangerous man I'd seen last night with the one offering me protection without demanding anything in return. My experience with Daniel had taught me that men who offered help always wanted something back. But Daniel had never looked at me the way Dante did, like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve rather than property he wanted to possess. How long would this last? I asked. This arrangement? Honestly, I don't know. He turned to face me. These things typically resolve in weeks, sometimes months, rarely longer. But I won't lie to you and promise a specific timeline when I can't predict how the Russians will respond. And if I choose option 1 or 2, what happens to me when you're done protecting me? You go back to your life. You're free to do whatever you want. The only thing that changes is that you'll have my number, and if you ever need help again, you call it. No strings, no obligations beyond basic human decency. Maria spoke up gently. If it helps, Sophie, I should tell you that Mr. Valenti has protected 17 people over the last decade. Every single one is still alive and living independently. He doesn't collect people, he saves them and then lets them go. 17 people. 17 lives preserved because Dante Valenti believed in repaying debts and protecting those who'd helped him. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it made me wonder about the 18th person, the woman who died 30 years ago because she'd refused his father's protection. I need time to think, I said finally. Of course. Dante returned to his chair. But while you're thinking, you're staying here, at least for today. Let me show you that this isn't a cage, that you can have safety without surrender. That's not fair. You're making the decision for me. I'm making the decision that keeps you alive through the next 24 hours. His voice was firm, but not unkind. After that, if you genuinely want to leave, I'll arrange security for whatever option you choose. But give me one day, Sophie. One day to prove that accepting help doesn't mean losing yourself. I wanted to argue. Every instinct honed by 3 years of hard-won independence screamed at me to refuse, to walk out of this mansion with its guards and gardens and gorgeous, dangerous man who thought he could fix my life with money and protection. But I was tired. Bone deep, soul tired from holding myself together, from working double shifts and paying medical bills, and looking over my shoulder and pretending I wasn't terrified of being found by Daniel, or killed by Russians, or simply ground down by the endless weight of surviving alone. One day, I heard myself say, but I want my phone, and I want to be able to call anyone I want. No monitoring my conversations. Agreed. And I want to see my apartment again, to get some of my things. Carlo will take you this afternoon, with appropriate security. And at the end of the day, if I want to leave, you let me go. No guilt trips, no manipulation, no, I'm doing this for your own good. Dante extended his hand. You have my word. I stared at his outstretched hand. This was a moment, a choice. I could refuse, could insist on leaving right now, could cling to my hard-won independence even if it meant putting myself at risk. Or I could take his hand, could accept help from someone who seemed to offer it without strings, could give myself one day of not having to be strong, not having to be vigilant, not having to carry everything alone. I took his hand. His grip was warm, firm, his calloused palm pressing against mine in a way that felt oddly intimate. He shook once, then released me, but I could still feel the heat of his touch after he'd pulled away. "Maria will show you to your suite," he said. "Lunch will be at 1, if you'd like to join me. If not, food will be sent up. Whatever you prefer." "I'll think about it." His smile was small but genuine. "Fair enough." Maria led me out of the office and up a grand staircase that belonged in a movie. The 3rd floor was quieter, more private, with thick carpet that muffled sound and artwork that probably cost more than most people made in a year. She opened a door onto a suite that took my breath away. The bedroom was 3 times the size of my entire apartment, with a 4-poster bed dressed in linens that looked like they'd never been slept in. Tall windows overlooked the gardens. A door led to a sitting room with a couch, chairs, and bookshelves already stocked. Another door revealed a bathroom with a clawfoot tub and a shower that could fit 4 people. "This is too much," I whispered. "This is what's available. You might as well be comfortable." Maria set her bag on the dresser. "There are clothes in the closet. Basics in what I believe is your size. But if anything doesn't fit, let me know. Toiletries in the bathroom, books in the sitting room, the Wi-Fi password is on the desk." She moved to the door, then paused. "Sophie, I know this is overwhelming. I know you've been hurt before. I can see it in the way you hold yourself, the way you assess exits in every room. Mr. Valenti sees it too. That's why he's being so careful with you. You don't know anything about me. I know more than you think. I know you put yourself through night school while working full-time. I know you send money to a women's shelter every month even though you can barely afford it. I know you haven't spoken to your family in 3 years, and you sleep with a knife under your pillow." Maria's voice was gentle. "I know, because Mr. Valenti does his research, and because I asked him to share enough that I could help you feel safe here." The invasion of privacy should have infuriated me. Instead, I felt oddly exposed, like someone had pulled back layers I'd worked hard to maintain. "Why does he care so much?" I asked. "I'm nobody. I'm just a waitress who happened to notice something." Maria's smile was sad. "Because 30 years ago, a woman just like you died because his father didn't insist hard enough on protecting her. Because Dante Valenti carries his father's guilt like it's his own, and he's spent 3 decades trying to save the people his father couldn't." She moved toward the door. "Lunch is at 1. You should come. He's actually quite good company once you get past the intimidating exterior." She left me alone in a bedroom that felt like a dream, in a house I had no business being in, under the protection of a man I wasn't sure I could trust, but found myself wanting to anyway. I sank onto the bed, which was exactly as comfortable as it looked, and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. No voicemail. Something about that made my skin prickle with unease. I opened my browser and searched Dante Valenti Chicago. The results were complicated. Business articles about construction contracts and real estate development. Charity events where he'd donated significant sums to schools and hospitals. A few carefully worded news pieces about alleged organized crime connections that never quite said anything concrete. And photographs. So many photographs. Dante at ribbon cuttings, looking distinguished in expensive suits. Dante at a children's hospital, holding a little girl who was smiling despite her bald head. Dante at what looked like a wedding, dancing with an elderly woman who bore a striking resemblance to him, his mother probably. In every photo, he looked exactly as he had in his office, controlled, powerful, dangerous. But there was something else too. The way he looked at the children in the hospital photos, the way his hand rested protectively on the elderly woman's back, the way he stood slightly in front of people in group shots, as if physically shielding them. This was a man who protected. The question was whether I could trust that protection or whether it would slowly transform into control. I spent the next 2 hours exploring the suite, trying to wrap my mind around the fact that this was temporary housing. The closet held clothes in my exact size, jeans, sweaters, leggings, even pajamas that looked more expensive than anything I'd ever owned. The bathroom had toiletries from brands I'd only seen in magazines. Someone had put real thought into this. Someone had anticipated my needs and tried to meet them without being asked. At 12:45, I changed into fresh jeans and a soft gray sweater from the closet. They fit perfectly, which was somehow more unnerving than if they'd been wrong. I brushed my hair, washed my face, and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, scared, but also, and this surprised me, curious. What would lunch with a mafia boss be like? Would he interrogate me? Test me? Or would he just eat lunch like a normal person? There was only one way to find out. I found my way back downstairs by following the sound of voices. They led me to a dining room that was somehow both grand and intimate. A table that could seat 12 but was currently set for 2, positioned near windows that overlooked the gardens. Dante stood when I entered, the gesture so automatic it was clearly ingrained. You came. I'm glad. You said lunch at 1. I'm early. Punctuality is a sign of respect. My father used to say that. He pulled out a chair for me. Please. I sat, hyper-aware of his proximity as he pushed my chair in before taking his own seat across from me. The table was set with china that probably cost more than my car, crystal glasses that caught the light, silverware that had actual weight to it. A woman I hadn't seen before appeared with plates, some kind of pasta that smelled incredible, a simple salad, crusty bread that was still warm. This is Teresa, Dante said. She's been with my family for 20 years. Teresa, this is Sophie Chen. She'll be staying with us for a while. Welcome, Miss Chen. Teresa's smile was warm. If you have any dietary restrictions or preferences, please let me know. I love a challenge. This looks amazing. Thank you. When Teresa left, Dante poured water for both of us, then wine for himself. He raised an eyebrow in question toward me. Just water, I said. I don't drink. Personal preference or recovery? The question was casual, not prying. Personal preference. I don't like feeling out of control. He nodded slowly, setting down the wine bottle. I understand that. Control is important when you've had it taken away. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The pasta was perfect. Handmade, I could tell, with a sauce that tasted like someone's grandmother had been cooking it all day. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until I started eating. Tell me about yourself, Dante said. Not the facts I already know. The things you choose to share. Like what? Like what you wanted to be before life got in the way. Like what makes you happy. Like who Sophie Chen is when she's not working or worried or surviving. The question caught me off guard. No one had asked me that in... I couldn't remember how long. I wanted to be a teacher. Elementary school. I love kids. Love the idea of helping them discover things. Why didn't you? Because teaching requires a degree, and degrees require money and time, neither of which I had after... I stopped, not wanting to share that part yet. After you left someone who hurt you. He said it gently, stating fact rather than prying. The scar on your wrist, the way you position yourself near exits, the 3 years of no contact with family. You left someone dangerous, and you've been rebuilding ever since. I set down my fork, appetite suddenly gone. You know, it's really creepy that you know all this about me. It's survival. I don't apologize for it. But his expression softened. I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable. Would it help to know that I respect what you've accomplished? Leaving someone who hurt you, starting over with nothing, building a life on your own terms, that takes more courage than most people ever find. You sound like you're speaking from experience. He was quiet for a moment, twirling pasta on his fork. My mother left my father when I was 12. He was not a good man. Powerful, respected, but not good. Not to her, anyway. He met my eyes. She took me and my sister and disappeared for 6 months. Lived in a shelter, worked as a waitress. Ironically enough, until she saved enough for an apartment. She rebuilt her entire life from nothing while 2 kids watched. What happened? My father found us. Convinced her to come back. Promised he'd changed. Dante's jaw tightened. He hadn't. But by then she was trapped again. She died when I was 17. Heart attack officially. But I think she just gave up. Decided she'd rather die than keep fighting. The pain in his voice was raw, real. This wasn't a performance or manipulation. This was genuine grief, still sharp after decades. I'm sorry, I said quietly. So am I. He took a sip of wine. But it taught me something. Taught me that leaving takes everything you have, and staying costs even more. So when I see someone who had the courage to leave, who's fighting to stay gone, I respect that. I want to help that. Because no one helped my mother, and maybe if they had... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. We ate in more comfortable silence after that, the weight of shared understanding settling between us. He asked me about my favorite books, my thoughts on Chicago winters, my opinion on the eternal pizza debate. I asked him about the photographs in the hallway, the gardens outside, how he'd ended up running his family's business. We talked like normal people, like we were on a date, almost, except dates didn't usually happen under threat of assassination while surrounded by armed guards. "Can I ask you something?" I said, as Teresa cleared our plates and brought coffee, decaf for me, regular for him, anything. "Why do you do this? The protection thing. I understand about your mother, about guilt and obligation, but you said there have been 17 people before me. That's a lot of risk, a lot of resources. Why?" He cradled his coffee cup, considering the question. "Because, in my world, most people take. They take power, money, loyalty, life. Everything is about acquisition, about gaining advantage." He looked up at me. "I wanted to be someone who gives instead, who uses power to protect rather than exploit. Is it enough to balance out the other things I've done? Probably not. But it helps me sleep at night." "What other things?" "Things you don't want to know about. Things I won't burden you with because they're my sins to carry, not yours." His voice was firm. "All you need to know is that when I protect someone, I do it completely. No half measures. No giving up because it gets difficult. What if I don't want to be one of your projects? You're not a project, Sophie. You're a person who saved my life and deserves to have hers protected in return." He leaned forward. "I'm not trying to fix you. You're not broken. I'm just trying to give you space to breathe while I handle the threat you didn't ask for and don't deserve." The sincerity in his voice was almost harder to handle than if he'd been manipulative. I'd armed myself against control and dominance and possessiveness. I didn't know how to defend against genuine care that asked nothing in return. "I want to see my apartment," I said abruptly. "You said Carlo would take me." "Of course, whenever you're ready." We finished coffee in silence. Then Dante walked me to the front entrance where Carlo was already waiting with the SUV. Before I got in, Dante caught my hand gently. "Sophie, whatever you decide after today, I want you to know something." His thumb brushed across my knuckles, a gesture so tender it made my breath catch. "You're not alone anymore, not because you're weak or need saving, but because you were brave enough to do the right thing, and that matters. You matter." He released my hand and stepped back. "Carlo will bring you back whenever you're ready. Or if you decide you don't want to come back, that's okay too. Just be safe." I climbed into the SUV, my hand still tingling from his touch, my mind spinning with too many thoughts to process. Carlo drove in companionable silence, giving me space to think. When we pulled up to my building in Pilsen, I saw what Dante's ownership meant. New security cameras, a fresh coat of paint on the entrance, repairs to the steps that had been broken for months. He'd bought the building to protect me, but he'd also improved it for everyone who lived there. That felt significant somehow. My apartment looked exactly as I'd left it that morning, except someone had cleaned. The dishes I'd left in the sink were washed. The floor I'd meant to mop was spotless. There was even fresh flowers on the small table. Nothing extravagant, just a simple bouquet of daisies that made the space feel less lonely. I packed a bag with essentials, more clothes, my grandmother's jewelry box, the books I was reading, my laptop, all the pieces of my life that mattered, fitting into one duffel bag. "Miss Chen?" Carlo appeared in the doorway. "We should go soon. It's not safe to stay in one place too long." "5 more minutes." I stood in my tiny apartment, looking at the life I'd built from nothing. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Mine alone, with no one to answer to, no one to ask permission from, no one who could take it away. Dante's mansion had offered comfort, safety, even companionship that I hadn't realized I was craving, but it wasn't mine. It was his world, his rules, his protection that could be withdrawn at any moment. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Sophie Chen?" A woman's voice accented. "Russian. We know you're at your apartment. We know you're alone except for one guard. That's not enough protection, little rabbit. Not nearly enough." My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "Someone who wants you to understand something very important. Dante Valenti cannot protect you forever. His attention will shift. His resources will be needed elsewhere. And when that happens, we'll be waiting. You think he cares about you? You're just another debt to him, another obligation. When you stop being useful, when you become more trouble than you're worth, he'll let you go. And we'll be there." The line went dead. I stood frozen, phone pressed to my ear, heart hammering. Carlo appeared instantly, weapon drawn, scanning the apartment. "What happened?" "Phone call. They knew I was here. They knew you were the only guard." My voice shook. "How did they know that?" Carlo's expression went grim. He pulled out his own phone, spoke rapidly in Italian, then, "We need to leave. Now." I grabbed my duffel and followed him to the SUV, scanning the street for threats I wouldn't recognize until they killed me. Carlo drove faster than he had before, his eyes constantly checking mirrors, taking turns that seemed random but probably weren't. "Mr. Valenti needs to know about the call," he said. "Did they threaten you directly?" "Not exactly. They said he'd eventually stop protecting me, that I'd become more trouble than I'm worth." Carlo's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "They don't know Mr. Valenti very well then. Once he commits to protecting someone, he doesn't stop, ever. It's not about worth. It's about principle." We pulled through the gates of Dante's mansion, and I felt my shoulders relax slightly. Behind these walls, I was safe, at least for now. Dante met us at the door, his expression dark when he saw my face. "What happened?" "Phone call. At the apartment. They knew we were there." I handed him my phone with trembling fingers. "They called from an unknown number." He listened to Carlo's rapid report, his jaw tightening with each word. Then he took my hand, that same gentle touch from earlier, and led me back to his office. "Sit," he commanded softly. "Tell me everything they said." I repeated the conversation as exactly as I could remember. Dante listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each word. "They're trying to separate you from my protection," he said when I finished. "Make you doubt my commitment so you'll refuse help. It's a standard tactic." He crouched in front of my chair, bringing himself to my eye level. "Sophie, look at me." I did. His eyes were fierce, certain. "I don't give up on people I've promised to protect. Not when it gets difficult, not when it gets expensive, not when months pass and the threat seems distant. I commit completely, or I don't commit at all." His hands found mine. "You're not trouble. You're not a burden. You're someone who saved my life, and I will keep you safe no matter what it costs me. Do you understand?" I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. "How do I know this doesn't become something else?" I whispered. "How do I know protection doesn't turn into control?" "Because I give you my word. And in my world, that's the only currency that matters." He squeezed my hands gently. "You can leave any time you want, Sophie. The door isn't locked. The gates will open. But while you're here, while you're under my protection, no one will touch you. I swear it." A knock on the door interrupted us. Maria entered with her tablet. "Mr. Valenti, I have an update. The Russians who called Miss Chen used a burner phone, but we traced the general location. They're operating out of a warehouse in back of the yards. And sir," she hesitated, "they have a file on Miss Chen. Very detailed. They know about her ex-boyfriend, about her finances, about her night classes. They've been watching her for weeks, maybe longer." The blood drained from my face. "Weeks? How is that possible?" Dante stood, his expression murderous. "Because they were planning this long before last night. They knew I ate at Valentino's. They knew the regular staff. They were watching for an opportunity, and when their man was made, they already had intelligence on the person who'd warned me. So this is my fault. If you hadn't warned me, I'd be dead." His voice was steel. "They would have killed me, eliminated anyone who witnessed it, and moved on. You prevented that. Now they're angry and scrambling, which makes them dangerous but also sloppy." He turned to Maria. "Contact Sergei. Tell him I want a meeting, tomorrow. Neutral location, just the two of us." "Sir, is that wise?" "It's necessary. This ends now." He looked back at me. "I'm going to resolve this, Sophie, permanently. But until I do, you stay here. Not because I'm controlling you, but because it's genuinely the only place I know you're absolutely safe." "What if I want to help?" "You've already helped more than you know. Now let me handle the rest." His voice softened. "Please, Sophie, trust me with this." And there it was. Trust. The thing I'd sworn never to give another man after Daniel. The thing Dante was asking for without demanding, offering, without taking. "Okay," I heard myself say. "I'll stay. For now." The relief that crossed his face was profound. "Thank you." That night, I ate dinner in my suite. Teresa brought up a tray with soup and bread and a slice of cake that was probably illegal. It was so good. I called the women's shelter where I volunteered once a month, told them I'd be unavailable for a few weeks. I texted the only person from my old life I still spoke to, my college roommate Maya, and said I was taking a spontaneous vacation. I didn't mention the Russians or the assassins or the Mafia boss who'd somehow become my protector. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my suite. A knock, soft and hesitant. "Sophie, it's Dante. Can I come in?" I opened the door to find him still dressed in the same clothes from earlier, looking exhausted in a way that made him somehow more human. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "I just wanted to check on you, make sure you had everything you needed." He stayed in the doorway, respecting my space. "And to tell you that I have a meeting tomorrow with the head of the Russian organization. We're going to discuss terms." "What kind of terms?" "The kind where they leave Chicago entirely, or they face consequences they won't survive." He said it matter-of-factly. "I'm giving them a choice. Most people take the first option." "And if they don't?" His expression went hard. "Then I make an example that ensures no one else tests me like this again." I should have been horrified. Instead, I felt oddly safe. This man would do violent things to protect me. That should have scared me. But after 3 years of having no one, of facing every threat alone, the idea of someone willing to fight for me was intoxicating. "Be careful," I said quietly. "Whatever happens tomorrow, come back safe." Something shifted in his expression. "You're worried about me." "Of course I am. You're doing this because of me." "I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. You just gave me the reason to do it now rather than letting it escalate." He reached out, then stopped himself. "May I?" I nodded. His hand cupped my face gently, thumb brushing across my cheekbone. The touch was tender, reverent, nothing like the grabbing and taking I'd known before. "Sleep well, Sophie Chen. Tomorrow this gets better." He left me standing in the doorway, my skin still tingling from his touch, my heart doing things it absolutely should not be doing. I climbed into the impossibly comfortable bed, under sheets that probably cost more than my monthly rent, in a room that felt both foreign and safe. And for the first time in 3 years, I fell asleep without checking the locks twice, without keeping my phone under my pillow, without the knife I usually kept close. Because somewhere in this massive house, Dante Valenti was standing guard, and somehow, impossibly, I was beginning to trust that. The gunshot woke me at 3 a.m. I bolted upright, heart hammering, the sound echoing through the mansion like thunder. Footsteps pounded in the hallways, voices shouted in Italian, and underneath it all, a silence that felt wrong. The absence of Dante's steady presence that I'd somehow learned to sense even through walls. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number I'd memorized without meaning to. Carlo answered immediately. "Miss Chen, stay in your room. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Mr. Valenti." "What's happening? Was that a gunshot?" "The Russians came early. They didn't want to negotiate." His voice was tight. "Mr. Valenti is handling it." The line went dead. I locked the door with shaking hands, then pressed my ear against it, trying to make sense of the chaos outside. More voices, running feet, then silence. The kind of silence that comes after something terrible has finished. 20 minutes passed like 20 hours. Finally, a knock. "Sophie, it's me." I threw open the door to find Dante leaning against the frame, his white shirt splattered with blood, then his left arm hanging at an odd angle. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear, focused entirely on me. "You're hurt." "It's not as bad as it looks." He swayed slightly. "Most of this isn't mine." "Most?" I caught his good arm as his knees buckled. "Carlo, Maria, someone." They appeared within seconds. Maria took one look at Dante and started issuing orders like a field general. Carlo helped me guide him to a chair. Teresa materialized with a first aid kit that looked like it belonged in a hospital. "The bullet grazed his shoulder," Maria said, cutting away his shirt with practiced efficiency. "Clean through. He'll be fine. I told you it wasn't bad." Dante tried to smile at me, but it came out as a grimace when Maria started cleaning the wound. "What happened?" I demanded, kneeling beside his chair. "They sent 6 men. Thought they could eliminate me before the meeting, take over my territory, and grab you as leverage against anyone who might retaliate." He hissed as Maria applied antiseptic. "They thought wrong. Are they dead or running? Either way, they won't be a problem anymore." His hand found mine, gripping tight. "It's over, Sophie. You're safe now." Over. The word should have brought relief. Instead, it brought a strange sense of loss. If the threat was gone, there was no reason to stay. No reason for Dante's protection. No reason to remain in this house that had started to feel less like a cage and more like something else. "You should rest," I said, trying to pull away. "Stay." His grip tightened. "Please, just stay with me for a minute." So I stayed, holding his hand while Maria bandaged his shoulder, while Teresa brought water and pain medication, while Carlo reported in quiet Italian about cleanup and security measures, and police who'd been convinced to look the other way. I stayed because this dangerous, powerful man had taken a bullet while protecting me. I stayed because somewhere in the last 48 hours, my fear had transformed into something terrifyingly close to trust. I stayed because I didn't want to leave. "All done," Maria announced, stepping back. "You need sleep, Mr. Valenti. Real sleep, in a real bed, for at least 6 hours." "I'll sleep when... now." I stood, still holding his hand. "You're going to bed, and I'm going to make sure you actually stay there." His eyebrows rose. "Are you giving me orders in my own house? Someone has to. You're clearly terrible at taking care of yourself." A genuine smile broke through his exhaustion. "I like this side of you. Bossy Sophie Chen. You won't like it when I make you eat soup and take your medication on schedule." "Worth it," he murmured, letting me help him stand. I guided him to his bedroom, massive, masculine, with windows overlooking the gardens where dawn was just beginning to break. He sank onto the bed with a groan that he tried to hide. "You don't have to stay," he said as I pulled off his shoes. "I know this wasn't part of the deal. The deal was you'd keep me safe. You did. Now I'm returning the favor. By taking off my shoes? By making sure you don't do something stupid like try to work while bleeding." I pulled a chair beside the bed. "Sleep. I'll be here." "Why?" The question hung in the air between us. Why would I stay? Why would I care about a man I'd known for 2 days? Why did the thought of leaving make my chest ache? "Because you could have sent Carlo to the restaurant that night," I said quietly. "You could have arranged protection from a distance, but you came yourself. You looked me in the eye and promised I'd be safe, and then you made it true. No one's ever done that for me before. No one's ever..." My voice cracked. "No one's ever fought for me." Dante's good hand reached for mine. "Sophie Chen, I would fight armies for you. I would burn this city down before I let anyone hurt you. And not because of debt or obligation or guilt about my mother." His eyes held mine with devastating intensity. "But because when you whispered that warning, when you put yourself in danger to save a stranger, I saw someone worth protecting, worth knowing, worth..." He stopped himself, but I heard the unfinished word anyway. "Worth loving." "Sleep," I whispered, because I wasn't ready for that word. Not yet. Maybe not ever. "We'll talk tomorrow. Promise you'll be here when I wake up?" "I promise." He fell asleep, still holding my hand, his breathing evening out, the tension draining from his face. I watched him in the growing dawn light. This dangerous man who'd killed for me, this powerful man who'd asked rather than demanded, this complicated man who'd given me safety without stealing my freedom. And I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to leave. Not today. Maybe not ever. Outside, Chicago was waking up. Somewhere in this city, my old life waited. The tiny apartment, the serving job, the careful independence I'd fought so hard to maintain. But here, in this moment, watching over the man who'd protected me, I understood what my grandmother used to say. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't surviving alone. Sometimes it's accepting that you don't have to. I pulled out Dante's business card, the one I'd kept in my pocket like a talisman, and finally understood its weight. Not an obligation, not a chain, a choice. My choice. And I was choosing to stay. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.